Hi everyone. So welcome to my live Q&A for the Curatio community. I'm really excited to be doing this. So I was going to say good evening because it's evening here in the UK. It's 8 o'clock in the evening. But I know over the pond, so to speak, so in the US and Canada, I think it's around mid-afternoon. So it's more good afternoon to all of you guys over there. If you're watching in Europe, good evening. Thanks for joining me. It's a real pleasure to be doing this, and really excited to be talking to the Curatio community because I've been part of the community for a little while now, and it's so lovely to be able to have support available, to be able to talk to people who just get it, who are from within the MS community. And it's a chance to share experiences, share stories, share advice and tips about living with MS. So this is as much about you guys as it is about obviously me telling you a bit more about my journey, where I'm coming from, a bit about my MS, something about my advocacy work maybe. So make sure you get all your questions in. We've already got some people online. That's brilliant. So hello everyone. Trina, thank you. If you could keep an eye inside the app, that would be great because I'm not very good at multitasking these days, especially when it's 8 o'clock in the evening and I've done a full day of work and my fatigue is kicking in. So it's great. So for those of you who may not have used this tool before, if you'd like to post a question, then there's a little chat box just there. There's a little chat box, and if you type your questions, don't think you're interrupting me or anything. I'll be reading them as I'm talking and stuff. I can do that, and it looks like some people know each other. That's even better. That's really good. So if you've got any questions, feel free to just type in and ask me. So start at the beginning, I guess. So my name is Trishna Bharadia. I'm based in the UK. For those of you who may know the UK a little bit or who have maybe been there, I live just outside of London. And I've been diagnosed with MS now for 11 years. So I was diagnosed in May 2008 at the age of 28. Trina is asking, your mum is a big support. What would you say to others who would like more support from their family and friends? I'm going to make a note of that. Family and friends support. I won't remember. So yeah, I was diagnosed 11 years ago at the age of 28. But I've probably had MS for around 14 years because what we think was my first relapse actually happened about 3 years earlier. So, and actually that's quite common, I found, with people who have MS, that often when you go back through your medical history, you suddenly think, ooh, that's that could have been an MS relapse, and we just didn't realize that it could have been something neurological. So in around 2004 I lost the strength in both my hands. And now if any of you guys who are watching, if you relate to anything that I'm saying, or you think, oh, that was me, that was one of my symptoms or something like that, write a comment, hit the like button. So yeah, I lost the strength in both my hands, but it was put down to repetitive strain injury. And I was otherwise really healthy. I was working full time, very active, very sporty, and it got better. I was sent for physiotherapy, it got better. But then in summer 2007, I completely lost the feeling down one side of my body. And that was really what put me on the path to my MS diagnosis. So within the space of 9 months, I was basically given a couple of MRI scans. I went for a lumbar puncture or a spinal tap, as I know that they say in the US. The diagnosis process only took about 9 months for me at that point, which was, relatively quick. And in the meantime, I also began to experience other symptoms. So things like burning and pins and needles sensations, tingling, lots of sensory symptoms, and also fatigue. So that was really my diagnosis. It came as a shock, I'll be honest with you, but it was also a bit of a relief because I felt like I know what's wrong now. I can do something about it. Again, if any of you guys who are watching, if that was you, how did you guys feel? Was it a relief? Did you think, actually now I know that what's wrong, I can potentially now start getting on with the rest of my, my life? And that's kind of how I felt. I thought, okay, I know what's wrong, and, I can start making a plan. So making another note of another question, areas, countries are most knowledgeable. Countries most knowledgeable. Support networks. Actually, I might answer that question very soon, actually. So when I was diagnosed, myself and my family we were completely in the dark. We weren't given any information or support, no signposting, no guidance. And I often say we were navigating a minefield of information, completely blind, really. And that's really where my advocacy work started, because I realized, so as time went on, that there was good information and support out there, but there were barriers to accessibility because, as I said, we weren't being signposted. We didn't know where to go for reliable information, how to navigate the healthcare system. So Trina has asked, so as a worldwide patient advocate, what areas or countries, locations are the most knowledgeable around MS and have the largest support networks in place? So in my experience, I've got to say, I would probably say US, Canada, UK and Europe. So there are pockets in Europe. So Italy has got a particularly good, particularly in terms of research. And then Australia as well. Europe, it's mostly Western Europe. I was actually lucky enough last year to do a talk at an event which was being held by the Romanian Neurological Patients Association, so APAN, APAN. And that association, and that's for several neurological conditions, not just MS, but also neurological conditions like Parkinson's. And that's only been going for 2 years. Now, if you contrast that with, for example, the UK MS Society, which has been going for well over 60 years, it's completely different. And the advocacy structure, there's the infrastructure to be able to advocate for your rights, for better services, for better support. In some areas, like, for example, in Eastern Europe, is much more what I would say is in a much more immature state. Because it just that structure and the sort of what's the word, the sort of facilities and tools and the policies and the organizations just haven't been there. So I find that really interesting, and it's actually something which I want to work more towards. So one of the organizations that I'm an ambassador for is an organization called ADD International. And they actually help to empower disability activists in Asia and Africa. And that's really important to me because I feel that in a way, I've been lucky to have been diagnosed in the UK because we have a really good infrastructure there to be able to advocate for our rights. So, you know, if something goes wrong or if you feel that something needs to be changed, it's actually relatively easy to find out how to go about it and also to know what your rights are. But in some countries, people with disabilities don't have that, particularly in Africa and Asia. So it's one of the reasons why I'm involved in that organisation. So if you're interested in that, then ADD International, that's the name of the organisation. It's a non-profit organisation, and they do some wonderful work about surrounding the empowerment of disability activists. So Beverly, hi Beverly. So Beverly says she was terrified when she knew what was wrong, but waiting for the medical world because she took care of, your father's aunt who had MS. Had never seen her walk, so was scared that you would be in a wheelchair straight away. So that's interesting, actually, that your father's aunt also had MS. So in my family, there's actually 3 of us who have MS. And also another relation I will talk about in a bit who has another autoimmune condition. So the year before I was diagnosed, so this was in 2007, my cousin, so my mum's brother's son, he was diagnosed with MS. He was around 26 at the time. So he was diagnosed with MS first. And then there was me. So I was diagnosed in 2008. And then I have an identical twin sister, so somebody who looks exactly like me. And she was diagnosed with MS 3 years after me, so in 2011. Now, one of the things that people often ask me, they're like, well, you've got 3 people in your family who have MS. Is it hereditary? No, it's not hereditary. So there is a genetic component to MS, as many of us probably know. And the way that I like to explain it is that even if you've got the genes that might make you more prone to an autoimmune condition, other factors have to come into play for you to potentially go on to develop it. Because if it was hereditary, then it would mean that if you had the gene, then you would definitely go on to develop it. I also mentioned that another relation also has another autoimmune condition. So in my family, we're 3 sisters. So there's myself, my identical twin, and we also have a younger sister who is 4 years younger than myself and my twin. And she has an autoimmune condition called ulcerative colitis, which is an inflammatory bowel disease. So as again, many of us know that in MS, we think that the immune system becomes faulty and it attacks the healthy tissue in the brain and the spinal cord. In inflammatory bowel disease, the immune system becomes faulty, but it attacks the tissue in the gut. So in your bowels, basically, and it can cause all kinds of, issues. Some of them actually quite similar to if you have bowel issues when you have MS. So you may go to the toilet a lot, you might have accidents. With inflammatory bowel disease, there's often a lot of, there can be blood and pain and also joint problems and fatigue as well. So yes, we've got 4 people altogether who have autoimmune conditions in the family. I actually wrote a blog about this for those of you who are interested. If you go to the Teva Life Effects website, so that's Life Effects, actually. Let me write it in the comments. This is so clever. So Teva Life Effects. It's a brilliant platform. I have to disclose here that I do write for them. It's one of the reasons I know about it. But I actually wrote a blog about when more than one family member has MS, and how that can be both obviously very, very challenging and quite difficult, but also it actually, in a way, it provided a really good infrastructure of support. And, as a family, we became much closer. And it's been a bit easier to be able to support each other because we kind of know what each other's going through, if that makes sense. So yeah, I often say that we have autoimmunity in spades in our family. So it's just the way it is. So yeah, so following my diagnosis, some of the other problems and issues that I've experienced include, as I mentioned, fatigue. Also, I've had the MS hug, which I don't know who decided to call it the MS hug. Just like the most silliest term for it, because it's not like a hug at all. It's not all warm and fuzzy and cuddly. It's actually really painful and very, very uncomfortable. So yeah, I've had that. And also, so one of my current symptoms at the moment is also bladder issues. So frequency, incomplete emptying. The other day, so which day was it? Last Friday, I had what I call a very bad bladder day. And I was going to the toilet, like I counted in one sort of 1.5 hour stint, and I went to the toilet about 6 times. So Beverly agrees, no warm and fuzzy about the MS hug. No, not at all. So yeah, those are my symptoms currently. Does anybody else have bladder issues, or maybe issues with fatigue? So before I did this, so Daniela, hi Daniela, what symptoms are the most important for you to track on a daily basis? You know what? You must be reading my mind, because I was about to talk about how do I manage on a daily basis my current symptoms. So my current overriding symptoms at the moment are fatigue and my bladder issues. And I do think it's important to track your symptoms, particularly because, well, here in the UK at least, unless you're on a medication that requires constant monitoring, you only really get to see your neurologist once a year. So in that year, lots can obviously happen. And actually, on a day-to-day basis, unless you're keeping an eye on things and you're tracking things, it can be difficult to notice any changes. And I actually realized that with my bladder, because I hadn't actually thought that there was anything wrong until suddenly I realized one day, I was like, oh, you know what? I've actually been to the toilet an awful lot this week. And then I started to think back and I thought, oh, actually, this has been going on for a little while. And at that point, then I thought, oh, maybe I should mention it to my neurologist. So in terms of fatigue, I track that really in terms of I keep a diary. And I've done that anyway. And in my diary, I just talk about how I'm feeling, how much I've managed to get done during that day, whether I was able to do it easily, if I really struggled, how many naps I might have had to take. With my bladder issues, when I'm having a bad day, again, I keep a log of how much I'm drinking and how many times I'm going, and things like that. So, and like I said, I do think it's important because, in the space of a year, I struggle to remember what I did last week. Actually, I struggle to remember what I did yesterday. Never mind over the course of a year. So yes, I hope that answers your question, Daniela. Beverly says, she remembers one of the first times she got the MS hug, didn't know what it was, thought she was having a weird heart attack thing. It was October 99 when you were visiting Ireland. Oh, that's very close. Linda says she was diagnosed with MS, but after blood tests, they discovered it was HTLV1, same symptoms, bladder issues. Yes. Do you know of anything of this virus? Linda, actually, no, I don't. I'm going to make a note of that. I'm going to have a look. I'm always very interested in finding out about new conditions, and because one thing that I found being diagnosed with MS and doing the advocacy work that I do, you do get to speak to people with lots of different conditions. And, I think it's just generally, I think it's really important, and I always have thought it's really important to take an active interest in your own health. And learning about other conditions is one way of doing that, because it also helps you to be able to understand, offer the right kind of support. So yeah, I'll be interested to know more about HTLV1. I've got no idea what that stands for. So yeah. So actually, that brings me on to quite nice sort of leads on to the next thing that I wanted to talk about, which was my advocacy work. So as I said, I get to meet lots of different patients. Well, no, not patients, lots of different people. So sometimes I use the word patient because when I'm dealing with like the healthcare industry, they just refer to us as patients. And I don't actually like that, because I think that puts a label on us that that's all we are. Actually, I prefer to be called someone with MS. So I'm a person with MS, just as I'm a person. So I don't just live with MS, I also live with irritable bowel syndrome, and also chronic urticaria and angioedema, which is chronic hives and deep tissue swelling. Human T-cell lymphotropic virus. Okay, fab. I'm going to look that up and read up some more about it, because I think that's really interesting, especially because there are other conditions which do in many ways mimic or are very similar to symptoms that are caused by MS. So Lyme disease, for instance, ME, fibromyalgia. I know lots of people who've been diagnosed with those conditions first and then actually been diagnosed with MS, or vice versa. They've been diagnosed with MS, but then told, actually, no, it's either fibromyalgia or Lyme disease or something else. So yes, the advocacy work. I do this quite a lot, so I have to remember to stay on track sometimes, because I love reading all the comments, and then I get distracted and start talking about something else, and I'm like, what was I talking about? So if I start talking about something different, you guys will have to remind me. Just type in the box, say, Trishna, you weren't talking about that. Get back onto the topic. So yeah, the advocacy work. So I got involved in advocacy for two main reasons. Firstly, I wanted to improve the support and services out there for people who have chronic illness. And I wanted to make sure that they knew that they were out there, because as I said, when I was diagnosed, I didn't have a clue that things like the MS Society, for example, existed. And I also wanted to raise awareness in the wider community about what it's like to live with MS and chronic illness, because I truly believe that unless someone fully understands what you're going through, they're not going to be able to offer the right kind of support. Now, that applies to clinicians, so your healthcare team. It applies to your family, your friends, relationships. It applies to your employers if you're still working. It applies to people in your social circles. So, for example, when I was diagnosed, I was still playing league field hockey. Now, if I hadn't been open and talked about the way that the MS was affecting me within my team, they wouldn't have been able to support me in the way that I needed in order for me to continue playing for as long as possible. And I said field hockey there because I know that hockey in the US and Canada is usually ice hockey, which I would love to try. But I can only ice skate forwards. I can't ice skate backwards, and that might be a bit of a problem. But yeah, here in the UK, when we talk about hockey, then it's field hockey, and it's something that I played since I was a kid. And unfortunately, I had to stop playing field hockey about 3 years ago because my fatigue was just making it I wasn't able to perform up to up to what I was used to, and I started to feel guilty about letting my team down. But more importantly, because of the muscle fatigue that I was getting, my reactions were slowing down on the pitch. When you have hockey balls flying everywhere, you cannot have slow reactions. And I ended up getting injured, quite badly injured a couple of times, hit with hockey balls, ended up in the ER. And I thought, okay, maybe it's time I tried something different, which I did. And I will go on to that. So in terms of the advocacy, if people want to get involved in advocacy, so this was one of the questions that came through in the app. If people want to get involved in advocacy, what would my advice be? Well, firstly, advocacy, it's anything that you're doing which can improve the support and raise awareness about MS or whichever chronic illness that you want to raise awareness and advocate for. So, it could be as simple as, if, for example, if you work and your employers know about your condition, then say to them, look, could you do a talk for the company so that you can tell them about MS and what the symptoms can be and what are the ways that people can help support you. Or it could be bigger things. So as I say bigger as in not bigger in importance, but I'm talking about on a larger scale. So things to do on a regional or a national or an international level. And the way that I really got involved in that side of things was I firstly got involved with my National MS Society. Linda says, don't want to distract, but the doctor told me there was a lot of misdiagnosis with MS. It actually turns out to be this crummy, I like that word, this crummy virus. Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. Well, so I'm not a medic. I'm not medically trained, so I can't comment on, obviously the rate of misdiagnosis or things like that, and I don't have the figures. But I'm definitely going to look up that virus and do some research into it to learn a bit more. So yeah, as I was saying, the advocacy work that I'm doing on a sort of a national and international level, it started because I got involved with my National MS Society, initially through Asian MS, which was one of the national support groups that works under the MS Society. So as you can probably see, I'm Asian, so my heritage is from India. And within the Asian community, disability, chronic illness isn't spoken about. It's swept under the carpet. There's lots of prejudice and stigma attached to sort of not being perfect, especially if you're a woman. So there's questions surrounding, can you have children? Who's going to marry you? How are you going to run a household? All of those kinds of things, which culturally there's a lot of stigma, as I said, attached to having a disability or having a chronic illness. So I got involved with Asian MS. I've had some bad experiences with some sections of the Asian community. Not all, some have been brilliant. But, for example, some people have said to me that I have MS because it's karma and God is punishing me for having done something bad in this or a former life. Some people, have never even heard of MS in the Asian community. And so I got involved in Asian MS because I wanted to try and dispel some of these myths and reduce the stigma and do it in a public way and say to people, hey, look, I have MS, but I'm still living my life and I can still live a full life and a positive life. And, don't write me off because I have this condition. And so from there, I then got involved with things with the National MS Society, so MS Society UK. And then it just kind of snowballed. I got involved in terms of collaborating with other stakeholders, so with clinicians and the NHS, the National Health System in the UK, and also with other charities and non-profit organisations. And then I started to also work with industry. So that's pharmaceutical companies, medical device companies, digital health companies, health communications agencies. And, people often say to me, how did you become such a prominent speaker, for instance, do you have a website? Do you have an agent and things like that? I would actually, one of the things on my to-do list is to create a website because I want to be able to share, some of my work more widely. But I work full time. I still have a regular full-time job. I'm a translator and analyst for a business intelligence company. All of the healthcare advocacy work that I do is all done in my spare time. So at the moment, trying to find the time to actually do a website is a bit difficult. But it hasn't been, it's been organic. So, somebody might see me speak at an event and say, oh, actually, we've got a project that Trishna might be interested in taking part in or might be able to add value to. So it's been very much organic. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, that, sometimes what it might take is, you could start a blog. Or, I know a number of people who have started their own podcasts, and very soon people will, if you put yourself out there, people can engage with you. Then you never know what it might lead to. So yeah, that's a bit about how I got involved in advocacy. So now what do I do? So I speak, I write, I blog and vlog, I offer consultancy on what's known as patient engagement, getting the patient voice heard, particularly in industry. And I also co-create information and services, and I review content. So anything that is going to be seen by somebody with a chronic illness, i.e. a patient, so any patient-facing content, I do review work to make sure that the tone of language is good, that it's understandable, that it's not patronising in any way, and also that it's relevant as well, because you know what? Sometimes industry and clinicians think they know what we want. Actually, they don't. So it's really important to make sure that things are relevant, which is why I often say to people, if you see surveys being shared on social media and it's asking for your opinions, give them, because that's one of the ways to make sure that what is out there and the support and the services and information that is being provided is going to be relevant and it's going to be useful. So yeah, let me have a quick look at some of the, so family and friend support. So so as Trina mentioned, my mum is hugely supportive, as is my dad, as is the rest of my family. And I often say that I need to make sure I don't get emotional here, because I do get emotional while I'm talking, particularly about my parents. I say that they're my enablers. I'm now 39 years old, and my parents are, they're hitting their early 70s, and I didn't think that I was going to be in the position that I'm in, where I rely on them more now than ever before, particularly with all the advocacy work that I do. One of my parents always accompanies me. So when I'm traveling all over, Europe and speaking at events and conferences, if I need to, for example, go, even within the UK, for meetings or I'm speaking at events and conferences, all that kind of stuff, then one of them is there, and they're helping me and they're supporting me and they're making sure that I'm able to do the work that I do. They also help me at home. So things like doing my shopping for me, helping me with household tasks like cleaning, etc. And also the moral and emotional support as well. I think that's really important. I might be I'm like everyone else, yes, I'm I'm a positive person, but I still have bad days. And, sometimes, I'll go to my mum and I'll just say, having a bit of a bad day, and she'll come and she'll say to me, oh, Trishna, you know what, just tell me what's up, tell me what's worrying you. And just being able to share that makes such a difference. What I would say, so if you don't have the support of family and friends, how can you maybe get that support, or B, how can you find support in other places? Firstly, how could you get that support? Now, I would say be as open as possible. My family, like, it's literally, they see the good, the bad, and the ugly of Trishna. Because when they're with you and, there's someone who's close to you, then you do feel like that you're able to show them the sort of warts and all kind of, version of you. And it helps them to understand how you're feeling and what you're doing. So when I'm very fatigued, I get hugely irritable. And if I'm hungry as well, that's it. Like, you have no chance. And, my mum and dad, particularly now, very attuned and very perceptive. And they know that it's just not me being bad tempered for the sake of it. They can spot the signs. And sometimes they'll actually spot the signs before even I do. I might just snap about something and they'll say, oh, Trishna, I think you're quite tired, aren't you? Oh, actually, yeah, I am. And I hadn't realised I'd maybe taken on too much that day. So Beverly says, I agree, being open. It allows space for more support, understanding, and compassion. Definitely. And I have to say that it's been very much an evolving relationship with my parents in particular. It hasn't been easy. We've, like any, family, we've had arguments. There've been times when I've said, oh, you don't understand, or, why, or they've said, oh, why are you doing this, what you're doing, and stuff. And it's taken a while. But that's just the nature of human relationships. We need to be open because we're not mind readers. And so, yeah, I would say that openness can really help, and also with friends as well. I'll be honest with you, I've lost friends, not because they don't want to know me, because of my MS. It's more that, things like I can't now manage to, for example, travel long distances like I used to in order to go and see people. Because by the time I get there, I'm tired, and then I just end up having a rubbish time. And very quickly, you find out who are the people who will make the effort to, for example, come and see you, or who will make the adjustments. So, I have a group of friends now who, whenever, they're going out, if they know that I'm available and I'd like to come, then they'll make sure that we go out and it's in the local area, so local to me, so that I don't have too far to go, and that when I get there, I can have a good time and I can enjoy myself. And those are the things which, unless you're open and you tell people, they're not going to be able to, obviously make those adjustments if they need to. So if that works, then fantastic. If it doesn't and you need to find support from other places, then what are my suggestions? Well, I would say places like Curatio are brilliant. It's, finding other people with MS who understand and who get it. So, the Curatio community is fabulous. There's Facebook groups, which are really good. The great thing about technology these days is that we can connect at any time of the day. We can connect across countries, across regions, across continents. We can connect across disease areas. So, that it doesn't necessarily have to be that it's somebody else with MS. It might be somebody with, another condition, but who is experiencing similar issues. So online support is great. I don't know if any of you have heard of, I'm going to write it in the comments, shift.ms. So that is a really fabulous charity. It's a social network for people who have MS. It was set up 10 years ago. It's actually their 10th birthday this year. And, they provide a forum for lots of people with MS. From all ages are welcome, but it's primarily younger. I say younger because I'm going to be 40 this year, and I'm still there. I don't feel that that's old at all. So Beverly knows Shift MS, yay! So if those of you who do know of Shift MS, if you take a look at their Instagram profile, if you go to their in the Instagram profile, there's this thing where you can archive the stories. And if you go to the takeover one, I actually did the Instagram story takeover this weekend just gone. It was brilliant fun, just great. I highly recommend, if you get the chance to do it, then, it's brilliant. But Shift MS not only provides online support, they also provide opportunities to actually meet in person. So one of the things that they're doing this year for the second time is MS sessions, which I will write here, which is mostly aimed at people who are in Europe. But I don't know, they may at some point do one in other parts of the world as well, because Shift MS is a global network. And it's about bringing young people with MS together to learn more about the condition, to learn about advocacy work, most importantly, to make connections. So, yeah, and I think the other thing for support, so as I mentioned, Shift MS also provides the opportunity to meet people in person locally. So, for example, in the UK, the MS Society has lots of local groups, local branches, I'd say in the US, I think the term is local chapters. And it's a great opportunity to meet other people who have MS. I have to say that as somebody, if you're newly diagnosed, then sometimes it can be slightly confronting, because you might, meet people who are at a more advanced stage of MS than you are. However, I always say to people that, so I've actually taken a lot of inspiration from meeting people who have more advanced MS than I do, because it's made me realise that life won't stop, it doesn't have to stop, and I can learn from their experiences about how they're getting on with life. And I've met some amazing people through, these kinds of meetups and my advocacy work and stuff. So I said, and I promised somebody that I would talk about exercise and more specifically about dancing. So as I mentioned, I'd always played field hockey, had to give it up about 3 years ago. And I've always been very sporty, always very active. And I thought I want to stay active. And I'd actually spoken to a psychologist. She's a neuropsychologist. This was, I think it was about 2 years after I was diagnosed. And I was telling her how much I loved hockey. And she actually said to me, she said, Trishna, you also need to find something else that you could potentially do if you relapse and you have to give up hockey. And I thought, actually, that's a really good piece of advice, because, what you don't want to happen is you relapse and there's something you lose, you lose something that you love and you don't already have something else that potentially you could adapt. Anyway, so I took up dancing. And Zumba, and I love it. So the great thing about dancing and Zumba is that you can go at your own pace, you can do what you can manage. It doesn't matter how old you are, what your physical ability is, how fit you are. You can have 2 left feet and no rhythm, and it really doesn't matter. And it's a great way. So for me, I go to a class for an hour. I have so much fun. I don't even feel like I'm exercising. And obviously, I'm keeping fit, flexible. I'm, burning the calories, which means I can have ice cream and chocolate and chips if I want. And it's really a truly inclusive form of exercise. So my younger sister, so the one who has ulcerative colitis, she's actually an inclusive dance instructor. She actually got involved with that for a variety of reasons. So because of my MS, because of her ulcerative colitis, but also, so she was a dancer. She had done several different dance styles and been going to classes and stuff. But unfortunately, overnight, due to a car accident that wasn't her fault, she wasn't able to do anything. And as part of her recovery process, and when she was able to physically start moving around, I said to her, look, why don't you come down to one of my Zumba classes? Because it doesn't matter if you're going at your own pace. It's about moving and having fun, to the music. And Trina says, great advice on finding something you can do even with relapse. And it's about moving to the music. So she came along and it really helped in her recovery. And so she thought, you know what, I want to do something to help spread this, chair yoga. Beverly says chair yoga is so much fun. It is. And I know a chair yoga instructor in the UK who at the moment I'm helping her to get more involved in the MS community, because it's such a wonderful way to keep fit and stay flexible and build your muscle strength. So yeah, my sister, I'm actually going to put her social media details if you want to look her up. So Instagram and Twitter and also Facebook. She is at Zumba with Anisha. And so she now runs inclusive classes, and it's about providing a safe, non-judgmental space for people of any ability to be able to dance. So in our class, there's 3 of us who have MS, all at various stages of the condition. There's somebody with cerebral palsy. There's somebody who is an amputee, only has 1 leg. We have somebody who's paralyzed from the chest down, somebody who suffers from chronic pain. We've got a couple of people where they've got other long-term conditions. My mum does it. As I mentioned, my mum's in her early 70s, and she's the one who, so I think the musicality skipped my mum in terms of the generational thing, because she's always had 2 left feet. but she's done Zumba now for almost as long as I have. And now, you know, people don't believe, you know, that she's in her 70s. They're like, wow, your mum is amazing and she's keeping up, and, you know, she's got rhythm and she's, you know, in time and stuff like that. So it is really a fantastic exercise to do. And it also meant that, so because of my advocacy work, for those of you who don't know, and you might have seen and thought when you saw the picture that was being advertised, that this Q&A was being advertised with, ooh, that's a bit of a sparkly picture. And it kind of looks like Dancing with the Stars. So it was. So in 2015, I had the opportunity to do Strictly Come Dancing on BBC One. So Strictly Come Dancing is basically, that's the UK equivalent of Dancing with the Stars. And I was chosen to take part in the first time they've ever done it for non-celebrities. They asked for nominations. My sister nominated me. She knows how much I love dancing, how much I love the show. And they were asking for nominations from the public for people who had done charity work or who had overcome adversity or challenges in their life. And so over 11,000 people were nominated, and they chose 6 people out of those more than 11,000. I was one of them. It was just, yeah, like phenomenal. I was like the most amazing thing I've ever done. Well, that a lot, and along with speaking at 10 Downing Street, I think the two kind of, yeah, they're about up there when it comes to things that have come out of my life with MS and my life with advocacy work. But yeah, so I was chosen to take part. So I appeared on national television in the UK in front of millions of viewers. And I danced a jive, which you will be able to, I will put, if you look up on YouTube, Trishna Bharadia jive. I don't know why that's come up orange. If you type into YouTube Trishna Bharadia jive, then you'll be able to see me. And actually, if you put in Trishna Bharadia Zumba DVD, I think it's Zumba DVD, might be Zumba Surprise, then you'll also be able to see me when I found out that I'd been chosen to take part, because I wasn't told that I'd been chosen. They basically did this entire setup, and I was taken along by my sisters under the guise that I was going to be filming as a participant in this Zumba DVD. Actually, it wasn't. Like, they had cameras there from the BBC, and, you know, I was surprised by one of the professional dancers and one of the celebrities who had taken part in a previous season of Strictly Come Dancing. And for me, so yes, it was brilliant. Like, I had all the sparkling dresses. I got to learn, you know, a dance from a professional dancer. I had all the hair and the makeup done. That was brilliant. But it was also fantastic because it was about raising awareness on a huge platform about MS. It was about dispelling misconceptions. It was also about raising awareness about the invisible symptoms of MS, because throughout it, I was suffering really badly with, you know, my fatigue. I was working full time. I was filming. I was dance training, sometimes up to 20 plus hours per week. And I was trying to manage my MS. And the whole thing, from start to finish, was 4 months of my life doing all of that. And it wouldn't have been possible without the support around me. So the support from my family, who, like I said, got to see the good, the bad, and the ugly of Trishna. Really, you know, I think back sometimes and I thought, oh gosh, you know, there were times I would come back from having done a full day of shooting and filming. rehearsals, and I'd be absolutely shattered. If it wasn't for the fact that my mum had prepared food for me, I would have gone to bed and just not eaten, because I was in that state of just being too tired. And I was, irritable because I was so tired, but at the same time, I was having the most wonderful time of my life. So yeah, it was brilliant. And it's actually, it really raised the profile of MS. After the show aired, I had people stopping me in the street to talk to me about my MS. People were stopping my parents in the supermarket to ask them, about how are they coping, and how is Trishna, and things. So it was a really wonderful way of doing being able to raise awareness, but also to do it in a way that showed that things can be possible when you have MS. Life doesn't have to stop. It's about finding ways of doing things, rather than, and finding ways to adapt to your life. If you'd like to know more about anything that I've talked about, find me on Curatio, and I think Trina as well will be able to obviously post maybe some of the links and stuff. I'll maybe email her some of the links that I've spoken about, and we might be able to create a post or something. So after this chat, has anybody else got some questions? We've still got a few minutes. So if anybody else has got some questions, then quick type away. It's been really great, and also great getting to know some more of the Curatio community, because as I said, it's such a supportive place to be, and support, as you've probably guessed, has been a huge part of me being able to live a positive life with my MS, and I feel that the more support that we can get, the better. The other thing that I'd like to ask is, obviously, if you've enjoyed this and would like to see more of this kind of stuff, then again, comment, or let me know, or let Curatio know. There's still loads of stuff I've not even touched on. I mean, so things like employment and MS. So as I said, I'm still employed full time. I work for a company. So things surrounding disclosure, making reasonable adjustments, and things like that. Beverly says, thank you so much. It's great that you're so willing to share. Oh, it's my pleasure. Yeah. So I've very much taken the attitude that if I can be as open as possible. I know that not everyone is comfortable about doing that. So, and that's absolutely fine. The other thing that I often say to people is, your journey with MS is unique to you. There is no right or wrong way of doing things. But for me, this has been the way that I've chosen. And so if I can give a voice to people who may not necessarily feel as comfortable about being as open, and I am comfortable with being open, then that's great. That's a bonus. So yeah, I would say it's very much about finding our own paths. And when I do things like this, or I do my talks, it's not about me saying, oh, you should be doing this, or you should be doing that, this is how you should be handling. That's not it at all. It's about sharing my experiences and what's helped for me and what's worked for me. And if you can take maybe a small amount of inspiration from that, then that's brilliant, because it might help. And that's how I've learned how to cope as well. I've spoken to people, I've heard other people's experiences, and maybe taken something from one place and something from another. And, and that's how I've managed. So, Beverly, I'm right there with you, Trishna. Try to share as much as possible so that more people can feel more comfortable about this silly disease. I'm totally with you there, Beverly. So, there's employment, there's things surrounding disclosure, family relationships. So I've touched on the relationship with my parents. and you know, that whole the carers aspect side of things. So again, that's another topic that, you know, I can talk about. I can also talk about things like, you know, becoming informed. How and where do you find the right information and support? How do you know whether it's reliable? Where are the good places to find out about research and things like that? So yeah, like I said, if you've enjoyed this, then do hit the like, write a comment, get in contact, and let me know. And yeah, hopefully we might be able to do this again. So we scheduled this in for an hour. It's gone really quickly. I kind of feel like it's just gone like that. But it's starting to get dark outside here. 9 o'clock in the evening, and yeah, it's getting towards my bedtime. So I'm going to have to love you and leave you, as they say. Thank you so much to all of you who had tuned in. It's been an absolute pleasure to have your company this evening for me, and afternoon for you guys. Another good topic that I think can be considered is talking with your doctor. Yes, definitely, Beverly. And actually, so there are lots of tools that are available, and lots of things that I could talk about around that subject, because one of the things that I actually present on, and I'm become an expert in, is things like shared decision making, having conversations with your healthcare team. I've written blogs about that, and things like that. So yes, those are all definitely topics. If you've got any more suggestions, then get in contact. Get into contact with the Health Concierge on the Curatio app, and hopefully we'll be able to do this again soon. Bye.